إذاعة صوت الجالية تقدم ساعة مع الجالية. إعداد وتقديم الإعلامي محمد سعيد الوافي.
Good time, everybody. How are you today? Welcome to the Arab Community Radio, AC Radio Washington. Oh, I'm sorry, acradiousa.com. acradiousa.com. It means stands for the Arab Community Radio in USA. Good morning, Elizabeth. How are you today?
I think we're at good afternoon.
Well,
I mean, people could be listening at any time.
Yeah, but not for those who works 24 hours like us.
That's right. That's right. And when we're drinking coffee at 1:30 in the afternoon,
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
call it morning, can't we?
Yeah. We sleep at 6 o'clock. Tell me about the bad news today.
Well, yeah. The life of a school board member, even during election season, never ends. And as we watch all kinds of news that's happening in Fairfax County leading up to the elections, we got to remember that we're back to being about the kids, being about our students, providing them good academics, a good background, and a good place to go for character education, but also a social circle that can uphold kids. And unfortunately today, my own children's school has experienced a tragic loss. They have lost a student to suicide today. And, this altogether reminds me how critical local elections are, because things like the student schedules, the length of a quarter, what we expect or communicate to children about the expectations at their tender ages. I think sometimes we don't remember how much stress students are under. And, we can't talk about the specifics here, but what we can do is say to kids that there's got to be a place for them to go to experience life as a child before they become an adult, and to go to the adults in your life if you are struggling, whether you're struggling with something social, academic, emotional, and there's a lot to being a school board member that goes beyond just maybe sometimes what the public sees, and providing the support to all the children in our community.
Yeah, well, my thoughts, and our thought that the Arab Community Radio goes with this kid and his family, and we would be feeling very sad, and we are feeling very sad if that loss happened in any of the communities, because at the end, all are our kids, my kids, your kids. We don't differentiate.
Well, and when something like this happens, it's not just the situation doesn't end for because that one student resolves their problems that way. It's all the kids that are left behind. It's the teachers that are left behind. It's the families that are left behind that have to process this. And kids frankly have enough going on that we really want to make sure there are crisis intervention teams that are at the school now. And I just for any students who may be listening, whether they're middle school or high school students, just be aware of your friends. Be aware of maybe people who are on the peripheral of your friend group. And if you see somebody struggling, it's much better to have said something and maybe be wrong than to never say something and wish you had. And
definitely. And the more you are tense and looking toward a solution, an immediate solution to your problems or to your problem, the more you're gonna be engaged in that very one direction. So it's better before taking such action to talk, because at the end, the harm you are doing is not only to your body or to yourself, it's the harm to your mother, to your sisters, to your father, to your all your family will be carrying the pain after you. So it's not being a man, it's not in man to take your life, because that life is not yours. That life is part of your part of the whole image, part of the whole establishment, which is a human body. And that body doesn't belong to you. You cannot do with it what you want. I mean, yet it's you, but it belongs feeling wise, psychologically, emotionally, it belongs to that mother, to that little mother.
Well,
That's it.
I'm really glad you brought that up because, there's a lot of very ugly rhetoric that's going on right now in the school board election. A lot of accusations about, being hyper focused on one issue or another issue. And this, for me, just highlights how critical the need is to, for, in my opinion, the other side to dial back the rhetoric, because this is what it's really about. And I have worked extraordinarily hard for us to acknowledge what's going on with our young people in our schools. I'm the first school board member to initiate student town halls, and I go into all of my high schools and spend time talking directly with students and allowing them, more importantly, to talk to me.
Yeah.
And so that helps inform me as a policymaker. That helps inform me, because I have one lens as a mom. But maybe the lens that I have as a mom isn't just the only lens. And so I like to spend a lot of time talking to kids. We had a budget town hall last night, for example, and, there must have been 10 or 12 Boy Scouts there. And they're fulfilling a requirement for a merit badge, and that's great, and I'm very proud of them for doing that. But, talking to them and saying, you know what, you have the opportunity to tell me, what works in school for you and what doesn't. And when the rhetoric gets ugly, the focus is taken off of what's important, and the social and emotional needs of children to be met in school, in addition to their academic needs, is paramount. And so I wish we were talking about the important things in this race.
Yeah,
The Washington Post is writing articles about things that are really affect very, very few children and don't have a real a broad impact to a lot of students. Things like homework levels, sleep, stress, the desire or ability to get into college. These are really significant, weighty issues, and kids struggle with this stress. And this is where we need to spend our time. And it starts from the youngest grades.
Yeah, talking about the desire or no desire to go to school. Talk to me a little bit about. Of course, here we are dealing with the fact that the elections are part of
6 days away.
6 days away, and these elections are part of the well-being of the student, not only at school, but also to build that bridge in between the school, the board, the principal, the teacher.
And a foundation for the rest of their lives, a healthy foundation for the rest of their lives.
And the family.
And the family.
And the family. This way, you kind of will circulate the problems and the problems that kids in 16 and 17 and maybe sometimes at the very early age of 13 and 15, like bowling, when they are boiled, or somebody is coming to do what we call the bullying.
So
And I remember one of the kids took his life because he was under his kids. They used to make fun of him, bullying, and all that. And we at the end, we are talking that your obligation and your duty, it does not stop at the budget or at making a good pedagogical or studies program. Your obligation may go far beyond
it
that.
goes far beyond that, and definitely the prevalence of electronic media in the lives of students and anybody who's my tender age or yours didn't, frankly, we didn't experience this. We went through middle school and high school, and we didn't have cell phones or the internet or computers or anything. And there is a tremendous overflow from an online life, which frankly has become seamless to the life of a student, and at much younger ages. It's really incredible when you see even elementary age students with smartphones or electronic devices, bring your own device to school. And so you see the spectrum of pressures and needs that are placed on students at a very young age. And we forget that their prefrontal cortex is not developed until they're 25 years old. And so we're expecting not only the production of academic skills and social and emotional skills probably beyond their age, but we're also expecting them to keep it all together in the presence of all of this social online pressure.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have
Yes, you do.
we have we have a caller.
Oh,
We have a call from Mr. Tom.
Excellent. So I'm pleased over the course of, and we said we would do this over the course of the next several days, to continue to introduce candidates who are running, who have the well-being of children in mind, who have the well-being of their families, who wish to authentically engage with not only the Arab American community, but the Korean community, the Chinese community,
Community at large.
the Latino community. But for each one, their community is important to them as a subset to the greater community. And I believe we have on air live Tom Wilson, who is running in the Sully district. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Elizabeth.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right, super. Well, so we're talking about there's frankly some ugly rhetoric that's going on either online or, in the press, that there is a narrow view or vision of candidates who are running for a change on the school board, frankly, and the opportunity to engage across a wide spectrum of issues, and that this is bigger than any one of us or any one issue, and that there are really some fundamental changes that we think are needed. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about your campaign, Tom?
Yeah, sure. Well, I am a graduate of Lake Braddock Secondary School, so I'm a proud graduate of Fairfax County School System. And I remember when I graduated from Lake Braddock thinking when I got to college that I was very well prepared for the rigors of first year at Cornell University. And I have four children of my own that have been in or are in the Fairfax County schools. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that I really hope to keep the schools great for our own children and their children. And I think right now we've got a situation on the board where the planning down the road is seems to be lacking. We have an issue with parents that seem to be not listened to, and some of the priorities of those families and parents maybe not being put into place by school board policies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you've expressed that. You've done a number of meet and greets. You've been at a lot of appearances that I've seen you with or been with you lately. Tell me a little bit about what's happening in Sully and what you're hearing from parents stakeholders, because we always remember that 75% of the people in Fairfax County don't have children in the schools, but the value, the backbone, sort of the anchor of a community is often the not just the quality of the schools, but how children and families are treated and really connect with those schools. What's going on there in Sully?
Well, it has been very interesting for me as somebody who's coming into politics for the first time to be in the neighborhoods, knocking on doors, and meeting the incredible diversity of people in our communities. So I've had a chance to meet with the Korean community on a number of times, and they have a tremendous focus on academic quality and excellence in the schools. Just this morning, I met with a family that has chosen to homeschool their children, and they talked to me about their concerns in terms of getting access to some of the services that Fairfax County schools provide, and some of the coursework and classroom advantages that public schools kids have, and how we can be a better partner with those families that choose to homeschool their children. And some of the frustrations, frankly, that parents have expressed to me include when they make boundary line changes within our district. That some of the views are of parents who have bought homes in communities based on where the schools that serve those communities now find that the rug's been pulled out from underneath them.
Certainly.
Yes, Thomas. This is Mohamed. I'm a co-host of this show. I mean, actually, since a month I became a co-host. Before it used to be my show, but Elizabeth kidnaps that show with my consent. I have a series of questions, but I'm gonna start dealing with them one by one.
Sure.
First of all, have you had chance to visit the family of the fallen student today?
He probably doesn't even know yet, because
Okay.
that's
Thomas.
So just to fill you in, we lost a student in one of our high schools to suicide today, and and the not only the academic well-being, but the social and emotional well-being of our students is within the care and concern responsibility of a school board member.
Yeah. So my question came in base of in sense of trying to see how much how connected is the candidate with the public at large, the mothers, the fathers of the students, and feel the same concern. But since we're talking incidents, let me ask you, Tom, how would you have chosen to deal with the situation like the one in Columbia, South Carolina? If you had the chance to be responsible for that classroom, or let's say for that school, how would you be deal with it, and what will be your approach in respect of reducing the amount of violence against a kid at the end? He's a kid or she's a kid. Would that be a good opportunity for you to make clear that the school board association or school board elections is more than a post or more than a job that you are applying for? It's more than a paycheck. It's way, way, way beyond that. And
Absolutely.
To elaborate on that, please.
Right. So this, I haven't seen the video, but I have heard a description of the story, and you're absolutely right. As public servants on the school board, it's incumbent on each of us on the board to be in tune with the community and be very sensitive to the situations that might arise in the school system. And Elizabeth could elaborate more on what the resource person at the school who's providing some of the security services, what their training is. But I think in this instance, it sounds pretty clear to me that they used excessive force, that there should have been other options, such as maybe clearing the other students out of the room and taking a nonviolent approach to this student who clearly was very upset and obviously intransigent. But I think the response was excessive, and I think that that officer, I think, actually probably is due some, counseling and discipline, if not firing, for
Right.
taking it out on that child.
And it's always difficult because sometimes when videos go viral, it's one side or it's one angle, and there's questions about what did she hit him or whatever. But it's almost more. I almost want to go earlier, because earlier back in time for any one of our students. Because then we get into reactive, and if we can intervene and prevent things like that from happening through, character education, through clearly defined rules in school, having good operational policies for staff and superintendent to implement, then we sort of don't ever get to that place. And wouldn't that be far better to lay down a strong foundation for kids where, that situation never comes to pass in the first place? I don't know, Tom, if you've seen, there's a couple of Navy SEALs, former Navy SEALs, who are on tour with a book tour, something called Extreme Ownership. And I was fascinated to listen to them, and it's talking about personal responsibility and how Navy SEALs are, lead and win, and it's through the notion of personal responsibility. And those are phenomenal characteristics that we could be passing on to children through any kind of various programs through our schools. And that's kind of what I'm hoping we have the opportunity to do, and what I think that through counselors and other things, providing those things for our kids so that they have the right resources.
Thomas.
Yes.
Thomas, talking about violence and attitude in schools by teenage, and we were talking an age which is very sensitive and very, very crucial age, which is between 14, 15, and 20. Here, sometimes goes up to 20 years. We have kids at school. And
actually, do you know, and that's actually an interesting point, do you know that we have to educate children until their 23rd birthday in Fairfax County Public Schools?
Yeah. Now the issue here comes up that do we... It's going to sound weird what I'm going to say, but I'm still going to say it no matter what. The lack of spiritual education in our mainstream, in our schools, and the fear that no, this is a religion, we're not going to touch on that. This is a religion, that's a religious symbol, and that's God. God got to stay out of the school, God got to stay out of the administration, God got to stay... Well, at the end, we end up kicking God from everywhere in our life, and that's created a situation where it's pretty much hard for you as an educator, as a school board teacher, call yourself any name, to approach a kid and tell him, well, because there is such part that you have should be respecting, which is your relation between you, your body, and your God. Would that be a reason why today we have this very harsh relation between... It's dry, it's spiritual-less, it's a vacant... There's a vacancy of value, I think.
Yeah, I think, Mohamed, your question is perhaps more just a cultural question than strictly in the educational arena. I mean, there is case law in the United States on how much religion can be in the public schools. There's been many cases by the Supreme Court, and to my mind, I think that the balance is tipped too far in favor of trying to exclude any mention of faith or God or religion in the schools. But there is case law in there that governs the how much of that can happen in the schools. But I think on a larger level in our culture, I think that this disconnection with our spiritual side and faith does put us at risk of not having any moorings for determining what is ethically correct and what is ethically incorrect, and it puts us into a position where each case is situational in terms of the right and wrong, and I think that's difficult, and it leads to can lead to some bad results.
Yeah, well, Elizabeth, Tom, I'm talking about this from a very secular perspective. I'm not talking about it as a religious orientation. I'm talking about a secular perspective.
Right. Just and having and acknowledging, basically like with the Scouts. The Scouts.
Exactly.
The primary directive, if you will, is that you've got to acknowledge that there's an extraordinary being, and it could be whatever, but there's something supernatural beyond yourself, and that we're not just here for our own existence and then turning back to dust and then that's it. And sometimes you hear about situations like with this student, and you see kids despair of stress and will I ever get into college? I mean I've heard just real sad things like my parents have such high expectations of me. I don't think I'll ever be able to meet them, or they have such high expectations of themselves. They push themselves. Sometimes it's an internal drive. And you see that degree of weariness, of frankly, somebody who's, a middle-aged executive, who's responsible for, hundreds of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for a company or something like that. And they're 16. And the ability to differentiate what's meaningful and what is really going to happen in a young life, sometimes, I think you're right, Mohamed, that they're, the ability to sort of just take that stress off of them and say, you can't handle it all yourself. You need to connect with something beyond yourself. And, some of that's the kids get through service. They're very, the kids in Fairfax County Public Schools are just unbelievable volunteers. Now, granted, they're getting service volunteer hours for things for school, but I definitely think that guiding young people to live outwardly for something, and especially with the whole electronic media, that turns, a child, a student inward so much. How many tweets I got, how many pings I got, who's Instagrammed, liked me, this, that, whatever. You know what? They got to put it down and live beyond themselves and serve, in the community.
Exactly. Thomas, don't you feel like the dollar has a symbol of God? In God we trust. We are one nation under God. Everywhere, even in your dollar, you are carrying the word God, and not by coincidence that when you talk to a liberal, an extreme liberal, not like me, and you mentioned the name of the faith. Oh, wait, we're not gonna say God. We're gonna say faith. That crescence of faith among those kids could have prevented a lot of dramas. A lot. And yet, I don't see how the government is contributing with the school board members, and how much help are you getting in straightening this situation and making it look like, hey, look, the school is a part of our society and the religion is part of our society. Not forcefully, you need to teach them or to pray with them, but at least to remind them from time to time with this omnipower or this omnipotent existence that manages, after all, everything. I don't know, Thomas.
Yeah, actually,
I'm glad you call it cultural, because it is indeed.
Yeah, and I think in the schools, actually, I think to look at it from the 30,000-foot level when you're talking about the laws that are in place, that may be one thing. But I think on a day-to-day basis, my experience with my own children, and two have graduated, and my oldest daughter, actually, one of her good friends from middle school succumbed to depression and committed suicide during her first year of college. And she was a super bright student in Fairfax County schools. But my feeling and my impression is that on a day-to-day basis at the schools, our teachers care deeply about the children and are on the lookout for signs of stress and signs of anxiety and signs of depression, and are saying and talking and having conversations with children in whatever way that they think is helpful to those child. They really are, and no amount of laws will prevent our teachers, who I think are incredibly well intentioned, from reaching out and trying to help these children that need it.
I would concur completely with you, Tom, that's definitely what we see, and certainly in your own district in Sully. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about the diversity that you've been seeing in Sully, because you sort of have a unique family yourself. Can you tell us about your family?
Yeah, I have 4 children. 2 have graduated from Oakton. I have 3 biological children, and then my 4th, actually, I adopted from an orphanage in China, and she's my youngest and is currently in 7th grade.
So that it's just so amazing, and you come from what I've called a mixed marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fascinating that you said, you can listen across the aisles because you listen across the aisle at home, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's really becoming more than normative in Fairfax County, which has an incredible amount of diversity. And one of the things that I think we are all sort of evolving, hopefully, in terms of listening to viewpoints without judging somebody who perhaps takes a more traditional view about marriage, and not labeling them a bigot, for example.
Right, and you have extended family that is also biologically not related, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. My niece was adopted from Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and I have 2 nephews and another niece adopted from Russia, and so we have quite a bit of diversity in the Wilson family right here.
Right, and so that's so amazing, because the Sully district certainly is, just like the rest of Fairfax County, is quite a mixing bowl, and I think it's an incredible opportunity for you to come from you yourself a multicultural, multi-ethnic, racial, diverse extended family, to say, you know what, I get it. I get all kinds of student issues. I get all kinds of family issues. And what a unique opportunity you bring to not only the Arab American community, the Korean community, the Chinese community, the Latino community, all of the communities that together knit the tapestry that is Fairfax County Public Schools.
Yeah, and I really hope that I've been able to reach out enough to those communities to encourage them to vote, and that they do have a voice in me on the board if I'm elected, because that diversity needs to be celebrated, because it really makes Fairfax County such a rich place to live, and it's very unique, I think.
So it's fascinating to me that you have extended family that is from China, from Russia, from Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and that, Manar Jean-Jacques, who has herself, her family's from Egypt, and her husband's from Haiti, and she has family members from China,
And her beautiful kids are from Virginia.
Virginia, and so how amazing it is that our slate of candidates, really represents such an incredible amount of diversity, uniquely. I think for the first time, I think Fairfax County voters have the opportunity not only for change, but change that is so positive and so engaged and so present within the community, and willing to listen.
Thomas,
Yes.
let's go back to business. Thomas is running is running for the school board.
In the Sully district.
Yeah,
Which is, hold on, just quickly. So the Sully district, for those who are not familiar, is basically like what, Centerville, Herndon, Chantilly. Is that right, Tom?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, great. All right. Now we will hear from Thomas. Tell us a little bit about your campaign, what you're promising to the families, to the kids, drivers, bus drivers, teachers, everybody. And then also, I would like you to emphasize a little bit on the gender. Since it's one of the major controversies now, and it's overshadowing these elections. Since ever I met with Elizabeth, she has that very big concern about what our kids will be thought.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with.
And tell us the number. Tell us your phone number, or maybe your website, maybe your Twitter, Facebook, how people can, and the spelling of your name. So once they get there, they are able to identify Mr. Thomas Wilson.
Yes. So you can find me on the internet at Tom Wilson. That's TOMWILSON. .com. So TomWilsonForSchoolBoard.com. I'm sorry.
Okay, again, it's Tom Wilson
for Schoolboard.com.
Tom Wilson for Schoolboard.com. Go ahead.
You got it. Yep, and so they can find out more information about me. They can contact me with questions. They can volunteer, make a donation. All of those things are available on the website. And I was going to say I was going to address the second question first about the gender identity question, and frankly, Elizabeth Schultz is a bit of my hero for standing up in the face of this rush to make policy changes in last May, because as you may recall, the decisions, the process was done very quickly without really understanding even what the policy implications would be for the board, and to this day, I don't believe, Elizabeth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we still don't know exactly how it will be implemented, these changes that were adopted in May with regard to gender identity.
No, as a matter of fact, I just finally got the answer on that, because we were expecting a report from the consultant in September, pardon me, and the reason we don't have a report is because there are apparently so many lawsuits around the country in so many different states that they're not quite sure what to tell us. So they're just going to keep working with the consultant for right now, which would support, in fact, my original point, which is we don't have enough information to know the current practices that we're doing, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and how you make change that's positive, but that is still respecting and keeping the dignity of all students and the safety of all students in focus.
Right. So one of the glaring aspects of that decision to adopt those changes was the obvious lack of listening to parents and families in the community. I think one of the at-large members commented at the time that he had received thousands of emails, and I think the reported attendance at those meetings by the public was in the hundreds at the meetings. So it was, I think, a surprise to many in the community that despite the obvious concerns raised by community members, that the board wouldn't even vote to delay the decision so that they could get more input and more information.
I want to just comment on that real briefly, because there has been some unnecessary rhetoric here recently that I find very distressing, and that I'm sure others do too, because they've shared it with me, that there is an attribution or an assertion by many of the incumbents on the board that the people who were present for the May and June meetings at the school board weren't even Fairfax County residents, and that there has been some dismissive commentary that those were people from other places in the state and they were carted in, and such and such, as if you discount the fact that maybe they're not your voters, then their opinion doesn't matter. And I got to tell you, I was standing, in the hallway. I was standing outside the auditorium. I was standing on the portico, talking to people who had emailed me, who had spoken to me, and I can tell you definitively that virtually every single person I met was a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a concerned citizen who doesn't have children and has never had children in the school system. It was very distressing to me to hear that it's almost as if those parents are being ignored again, and dismissed again by an attribution that you don't even live here.
Have they been ignored before? Because you said again.
Well, that now that the attribution now that they're saying what they did, the reason they didn't listen to them in May and June was they believed that they didn't even live in Fairfax County. So they didn't listen to them then, and now you're sort of further dismissing, 1,000 parents, and never mind the thousands of emails we got, that you're dismissing them because we can't prove that you live here, so we don't have to value your opinion.
Yeah, but the truth is truth. I mean, if you have a messenger coming with the voice of truth, whether he lives in China or in Singapore or in Fairfax County, I believe I believe the voice of truth is the voice of truth, no matter what. Anyways, back to our candidate today, Mr. Thomas Wilson.
Yep.
And you can reach him at tomwilsonforschoolboard.com. Again, his website is tomwilsonforschoolboard.com. We will be back to you. What makes you, Mr. Thomas, better than other candidates?
There's only one other candidate, and I think that she is actually a delightful person and very accomplished herself. So I think that it's really a choice between two good candidates. But I would say that perhaps I offer more to the Sully district citizens. I actually, as a graduate of Lake Braddock, have experienced Fairfax County schools in a different generation. I went then to Cornell University, where I studied labor relations, and from there took a commission as an officer in the Army and served 4 years as an Army officer. After which I got married and went to law school at Northwestern and worked at one of the largest law firms in Chicago. And then after our second child was born, my wife and I decided to move back to Virginia so that we could be closer to parents and family that were out here. And I worked downtown in Washington, D.C. for what I think still is the largest law firm in Washington, D.C., a firm called Hogan & Hartson. All of that time I've spent working as a commercial real estate attorney doing large, complicated commercial transactions. So, for example, I was the lead associate attorney when Marriott Corporation spun off all of its hotel real estate assets into a separate company. It was a real estate investment trust that they set it up as. So I have, in my own experience as an attorney, dealt with incredibly large and vastly complicated transactions. And in those transactions, there are many stakeholders who have strong positions and have to be somehow brought together in order to close the transaction. And so my experience as attorney has been to assimilate that level of complexity and bring the people together so that the deal gets done. And I think that really translates well to Fairfax County, where we have a budget that's almost $3 billion. We have almost 200 schools. We have more than 185,000 students. We have 40,000 employees. And we have a relationship between a board of supervisors and a school board that is at sometimes clearly dysfunctional. And I think somebody like me who can kind of take in the broader sweep of the situation of a very large and very complicated county and a very large school system that uses more than half of all the county funds each year, and help to promote better government that's more efficient, more responsive to the community, and also provides some of the best education available in the public schools in the country.
Yeah, I mean, that can't be better said. Those are the complex issues that are before the board, and sometimes when this rhetoric starts flying around and assertions are made that our candidates only think about one thing or trying to undermine policy. You hear somebody like Tom Wilson, who's running in the Sully district, say there are skill sets that he has provided to our country, serving as an officer in the military, that he has acquired over a broad professional career dealing with complex business dealings, commercial real estate transactions, money, very diverse opinions and desires of the parties involved with these transactions. That translates to the work of the 10th largest school system in the nation.
Yep.
And now you're bringing a skill set of a group of leaders who can help navigate us out of $100 million deficits, overcrowded classrooms, overcrowded schools, 1,000 trailers, underpaid teachers. That takes complex leadership skills. And I'm really, really proud to have Tom running in the Sully district, because I think that for all of our communities, coming from and representing a very culturally diverse family, a network of family members like he has, that's the whole package, really.
Yes. We have 10 minutes left. We're going to divide it the following way. We're going to be talking with Tom, but at the end we will offer Elizabeth also another 3 or 2 minutes to summarize a little bit for us the rest of the candidates and where is the campaign at this point. But let me talk myself a little bit about when we look at what Elizabeth called it rhetoric, or we're gonna call it the controversial issue. Since when talking about religion, they said religion out of context in school, no religion in school, and now. I received some email from Elizabeth yesterday showing me a list of material that will be programmed to be taught to kids about sex, interacting, and well.
That's not will. That's is.
Is. Well,
those are our current. That's our current curriculum.
Exactly. And that's what you are approving?
It's already approved. That's what they approved in June.
And you're trying to override that? Is that true?
Well, the question of override or return more power to the parents to decide what their children are taught is definitely. I think.
For God's sake, here you are talking sex. And let's compare it with religion. Here you excluded completely this notion of religion from schools just because there is a diversity, there is a many thoughts, many says about it. And why don't you apply the same criteria that you're applying for religion, apply it for sex, and leave it to the family? That part should be left to the family to decide about it, whether to do it, not to do it, give them a manual. You get my point, Thomas?
Yeah, Mohammed, you're absolutely right. And I've heard that over and over again as I walk through the neighborhoods. The school board has to sort of flip the switch so that parents are the primary educators of their children in areas that that. As Elizabeth referred to, these controversial areas. And one of the things that we could do is to allow for much greater ease in terms of parents to avoid those instructions that they don't want their children exposed to. And one of the things that has been asked is, could we make the opt-out for some of the curriculum and opt-in, so that parents would have to affirmatively sign off on having their child taught some of the things that I think maybe you've seen in the curriculum, as opposed to figuring out how you're going to get your kid out of those lessons.
Thomas Wilson, thank you so much for being with us, and thanks to Elizabeth Schultz for inviting you, and thanks to her also for raising so many concerns and so many issues that are in the bottom of every parent. Tom Wilson for schoolboard.com. You can reach to Tom. You find his email, his contact information, his campaign, everything you want to know about Tom Wilson for schoolboard.com. And remember, you can still go and vote early from now until the 3rd of November. And by the way, it is not politics, but yet it's more than politics. It's the future of your kids. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So, it's interesting something that Tom brought up at the end there, talking about our families, our values, and really, in a way, when you look at the national news stories, I wonder if you have values of any kind, are they under attack? If you have Christian values,
do we have any values left?
Well, if you have a value, I think that there's somebody out there in this outrage-a-thon kind of mentality, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, that if you hold anything to be dear as a belief, a value, a thought, there is a group laying in wait that is going to take you out, that is going to bring you under attack. If it's a Christian faith in particular, and I'm not saying that the Christian faith has anything to do with informing a decision to bring Christianity into schools or anything else, but just, it informs you. It informs it. It is a basis from which you navigate in your daily life. And, if you are a faithful Muslim, if you are a faithful Christian, if you're a faithful Catholic, it seems like, it's open season on faith, period. And I'm using the little f for faith, not a faith, but just faith in general. Mm-hmm. And somebody asked me the other night, it's funny, and within 72 hours, I had been inside a mosque speaking to Muslim men after they prayed. I was inside a...
Hey, by the way, tell me, how was the reaction?
I got to say, at first I thought it was a little bit tepid, a little cool as I walked into the room, but I speak very frankly. I think that people don't like all the politicking. They don't like politicians' answers. They just want somebody to speak to them plainly. Heart to heart. And I think within about 10 seconds, I had their attention, and I spoke for 3 minutes, and there was rapt attention by the end. And
well, the issue here is that these mosques, in general, they have their educational institutions at every mosque. There is a corner where they are teaching the language, Arabic, and religion, the Quran, the Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet.
They also have Boy Scout troops, and I was amazed that, in fact, that voter turnout is often 60 or 70%.
Yeah, but my concern here is the school board supervising this kind of schools also?
Not at all.
Well, that's dangerous.
Not at all.
Here we are in a lack, and I may be one of the most voices asking that we cannot have 3, 4, 5 umbrellas for the education policy of our kids.
Well, we're always going to remember this country was founded on religious liberty, and I am a constitutionalist, probably what most people would call a Reagan conservative.
Yeah.
And it is essential to me that if somebody presents a case for educating their child outside of the public school system for purposes of religious liberty, I'm going to go to every length to try to respect that. Now, there is a question or movement around.
Well, hold on. Here's my concern. I just want you to answer to it. When we free hands on self-educating, whether it's in school or whether it's private schools, mosques, or houses or home, don't you see that here we may fall in a very, very, very tricky issue, which is the homegrown terrorism?
Listen, I don't disagree that there are some state standards that need to be met, but this is again why being a school board member can't just be relegated. Oh, and I'm glad you just said that. Before we go, I've got an article I want to highlight. But how you
still have 2 minutes.
I know how important it is, because it's not just, I was a PTA mommy, or I was a PTA daddy, or, I'm a coach in the community and people know me and therefore they know my name. There are complex executive, judicial, and almost legislative components to being a school board member, particularly in a division the size of Fairfax County, with the potential influence that the decisions we make don't just affect or impact Fairfax County. So often a decision that happens at the Fairfax County level is picked up on or becomes a little bit of a litmus test for other school districts around the country. And I bring that up because this is, there was a very important, what I think may almost be a watershed article that was published in the Federalist yesterday. And people can go to thefederalist.com. The name of the article, and it's on my Twitter feed, which is at Think Schultz. I don't think I've ever given you all that. At Think Schultz, ThinkSchultz. But Stella Morabito has written an article called Ask Not Who's Running for President, Ask Who's Running for School Board. And the subtitle to the article is The Decisions of Our Local Officials Have Far More Direct Impact on Our Lives Than Those of Federal Officials. Let's keep it that way. And it talks about the ability for corruption at a national level to begin when people take their eye off the ball with local elections, and how eventually as local elections are less and less participated in by the voters, and fewer people pay attention to who becomes their local officials, that kind of political power breeds corruption at higher levels eventually.
Back to the battleground, Elizabeth Schultz, school board member.
6 days.
6 days. Please
4
tell
votes.
us in 30 seconds to 1 minute. Tell us the names that you have front of you for the candidates. Tell us what they are running for. Very briefly, please.
Very briefly. Okay, so we're going to start in Drainesville, which is up McLean, Langley area of the county. We have Pete Kurzenhauser, and that's a big last name, but you can find him at Kurzenhauser, KURZENHAUSER for schoolboard.com, Pete Kurzenhauser. Anthony Stacy, that's a nice, easy name, Anthony Stacy, and he's Anthony for schoolboard.com in the Mount Vernon area of Fairfax County. Yours truly is available in the Springfield district, and while I don't have opposition, certainly I would appreciate a vote, and you can find me at elizabethschultz.org, elizabethschultz.org. Tom Wilson, who we were just talking about, Tom Wilson for schoolboard.com. He's running in Sully, which is Centerville, Chantilly, Herndon area of Fairfax County. Going into the middle of Fairfax County a little bit more is Providence. That's kind of Vienna, Falls Church, Oakton area. And Patty Reed, she's the only other incumbent that we're advocating for at this point, and she's the one who gave an impassioned speech in the May and June timeframe. Reed, R-E-E-D, not as in you read a book, but as in
As Harry Reid.
As in, not even that one. That one's different too. So REED 4, and it's the number 4. She's got the number 4 school board, and she's in the Providence district. And then Mark Wilkinson, Fairfax County School Board, Hunter Mill candidate, and that's up in the Reston Herndon area as well. Mark Wilkinson, WILKINSON for schoolboard.com. And then, of course, we've got Dr. Bob Copeland, Jeanette Huff, and Menard Jean-Jacques running at large. Bob for school board. That's nice and easy. He's the only Bob. He's number 1 on the at large at the top alphabetically. Jeanette Huff. Jeanette, JEANETTE for schoolboard.com, and she is number 2. Then you can skip number 3 alphabetically and go right on to number 4, 1, 2, and 4 on the at-large slate, Menard Jean-Jacques, Menard, MANAR, FOR, Fairfax.com. That's your slate.
And that will be the end of our show today. That was Elizabeth Schultz and Mohamed Said Ouafi with you at the Arab Community Radio, acradiousa.com. Again, it's acradiousa.com. We will be pleased to meet with you and to hear you and hear from you. You can hear from us also tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. at www.acradiousa.com. Thank you for being with us. We promise we will be with you.
إذاعة صوت الجالية تقدم.
Is there any bye from you? Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
ساعة مع الجالية. إعداد وتقديم الإعلامي محمد سعيد الوافي.